Welcome, everyone. It's really wonderful to have you in the room, and thank you for either being directed here or choosing to come here to spend the next hour and a half with me and my eminent panellists, whom I'll introduce in a minute. I've been looking forward to this session for a long time, and I specifically asked that we have a session for Commonwealth Home Support Program service providers, because sometimes we have the tendency to talk past you. We kind of assume, I thought they'd get a chair. We sometimes think home services is this kind of encompassing whole, and people will find their way into the words that we share with you, the expectations that we articulate. And I'm not sure we get the translation right all the time. So I am very pleased that we have this opportunity, and we'll take this to explore with you a really important topic. Now, the headline topic is governing bodies working with older people in the design of their care, but our specific topic that I and my panellists will explore is workplace culture and great care, and that's the preparation we've done. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the panellists with whom I share the stage. Perhaps I can ask each of you to tell us who you are and where you're from to start proceedings, David.
Yes, thank you.
Do you have a mic? Good idea.
I do have a mic. Thank you, Janet. Look, David Martin. I'm the chair of Southern Cross Care SA, Northern Territory and Vic. I should point out that there are Southern Cross Cares in each of the states, so my remarks refer to Southern Cross Care SA, Northern Territory, Vic.
Wonderful. Thank you. Vikram.
My name is Vikram Madan, and I'm a member of the Council of Elders. It's been an absolute privilege to be on the council. We've had a couple of meetings in Canberra, and there's so much to learn what is coming in aged care. I also have been with multicultural aged care here for the last 12 years or so, and do take up the voice of the CALD community in various forums. I also am on the board of Maltese Aged Care, so bit of a connection with different CALD community groups, who are looking after the aging population. Thank you.
Now, Laree, my sin, I didn't check your pronunciation. Is it Laree or Laree? Laree. Phew, I thought I had it right. Okay, tell us a bit about yourself.
Thanks, Janet, for having me. I'm Laree Verra. I'm the CEO and very proud to be the CEO of Better Together Community Sport, and we're a small CHSP provider in the beautiful far north Queensland on the Atherton Tablelands.
Thank you. And I know the fourth panellist, and hopefully you will come to know her too, Shelley.
Good morning, everybody. Really a great pleasure to be with you this morning. My name is Shelley Castree-Croad, and I'm the Executive Director for Enterprise Governance and Corporate Operations at the Commission. But most of my career has been spent running hospitals, health services, community services. So running, managing, redesigning services with lots of paid staff and also volunteer staff. So I've been in some of your shoes, so hopefully I'll bring some of that to this morning's discussion too.
So we have an array of experts across the panel members, and of course we have lots of experts in the room. So we will get to questions and answers, and I am informed that you should look for this session in your schedule on your app. Go to the Q&A and you'll see a live Q&A happening now. Click on this and you'll be able to submit questions. Please do. We also have some standing mics, as you can see, in each of the aisles, and if you'd prefer to position yourself in front of a microphone at some point when I cue you. Very pleased to take your question from the floor. So let's get underway. The way I want to start, which is essentially unscripted, which I decided to do last night, is to ask for a show of hands. And I went looking for a menu of CHSP services. And what I want to know, and I think the panellists would welcome this as well, is can you put up your hand if you provide allied health and therapy services? Yeah, okay. Laree does too. Domestic assistance? Yeah, that's not surprising. There are a lot of you there. Goods, equipment and assistive technology. Oh, good. That's good. That's good. Next group, home maintenance. Wow, that's another popular category, right? Home mods. Oh, lots of you, more of you. Meals? That's a toughie. I could go into centre-based or at home, but I won't. Nursing? Fewer of you, yes, that makes sense. Okay. Other food services? No, that's different from meals. Okay, yes. Personal care? Yeah, fairly dominant. Social support? Individual or group? Yes. Okay, a lot of you doing that. Yep, that makes sense. Specialised support services, things like continence advisory, client advocacy, dementia advisory, that sort of thing, yeah. Okay, sprinkling. And transport. Oh, that's quite popular too. You guys do the heavy lifting. CHSP Services looks after over 800,000 older Australians across the country. And I describe you as the community glue. What you do knits communities together. It allows individuals, older people across Australia, to continue being part of their local communities, often where they've grown up, certainly where they've moved and they want to remain for the balance of their time. And so you do some vitally important work. And there has been a discussion ongoing for some time about how CHSP services might change. And you would have been part of that discussion in various ways, and you might have certain misgivings about the direction of travel. But the fact is, there is real benefit in the convergence which is anticipated finally in the Support at Home program. But what you do know also, courtesy of the recent announcement of government, is that CHSP services will not be brought into the redesigned Support at Home program until at the earliest July 2027. So there is a lot of time between now and then to get it sorted, to get it right, for you to be settled and comfortable and confident about the opportunities it presents and possibly risks, and how you're going to manage yourself in that new operating environment. So I'm not proposing to talk about that today. Happy for you to lodge questions, but the Commission is not going to stand up and pretend we know when in fact the people holding the reins are in the Department of Health and Aged Care. What we are going to talk about today is culture. Now, culture is variously defined, and I debated with myself, and I've lost the clicker. Did he leave it up there? Yes. It comes with so many definitions, doesn't it? And you just need to have a casual glance at a textbook to come across another definition. And I don't want us to go down into the weeds of defining, well, that's not quite what I mean by culture, or maybe there's a better way of understanding it. With the agreement of the room, what I'd like to suggest is that we agree for now that culture is the way we do things round here. Okay? Now, there are lots of tips and tricks in relation to culture, and this chart may be way too small for you to read, but basically what it says is there's a bit you can see which is above the line, and then there are these branching roots beneath the line, the patterns, the structures, the practices, the spaces, interactions, behaviours, mindsets, values. All of that is the layering of the structural elements of what you see when you observe staff interacting with each other or interacting with an older person. So culture is not easy. And what you're going to hear from the panel members is just that. Culture is not easy. But everyone's got a clue. Everyone's got a suggestion to make. And this isn't a bad set of suggestions. And again, we're not going to go into the theory. I want this to be a very practical discussion. But these sorts of things can be useful. There is a value in this, and you'll hear from David and some of the others how they interact with this set of concepts in delivering a generous, a safe, a thriving culture within their organisation of aged care. So just have a quick look at these: vision alignment, leadership example, employee involvement, recognition awards, work-life balance, continuous feedback, inclusive focus, community engagement, professional growth, and open engagement. And you think, oh my God, how do you encompass all of that? The fact is, you're actually doing it now. I'm not saying you're doing it universally well, because I don't know. I wouldn't presume to know that. But you are probably interacting with each of those boxes in going about organising and delivering care. So it's not rocket science, even though there are some experts who make a living by selling these sorts of templates. The next, and I'll move through these really quickly, because all I'm doing is illustrating that there is information out there. There are tools available which are not aged care specific, but are nonetheless really applicable to this conversation. They are kind of the platform from which we spring rather than where we get stuck. So this is a really interesting one. Killers of company culture on the left and the fixers on the right, which go to some of the same issues that the previous slide outlined. And by the way, I can make this slide set available to you if you're interested in getting it, okay? Righto. It's done. Consider it done. But you know, these are interesting. This is, I think, the final one in the list. 10 critical roles of culture change leaders. Is that what you are? Do you describe yourself that way? Because you should. If you're managing an organisation, if you're a senior member of staff in a CHSP service, then you are actually, in your own way, cultivating, enabling, modelling, and potentially changing culture within your organisation. And what you say, what you do, and the way you articulate your expectations of staff are all material to the way staff behave in the workplace and whether they enjoy coming to work and saying, I want to keep working here. In fact, I'm going to recommend this service to my friends because it is such a great place to work. And what we know is when staff are saying that, what they're also doing is delivering great care. Because when you have happy, satisfied staff who feel well supported in the workplace, it translates into great care. Not universally, not every single day, but overall you can reliably get a correlation between strong, high-performing culture and strong, high-practice care. And that's what we're reaching for today. That's the part of the conversation that I most want to explore. And I'm very interested in hearing your viewpoints. But let's move on from the slides and invite my panel members to say a few words. I'm going to start with you, David. Talk to us a bit from the perspective of a board member. So somebody in charge of governance for an organisation as significant as yours. How do you come to this culture question? What does it mean for you? And I understand you have a video that you want to share with us as well.
Yes, I would like to do that, Janet, a little later. You're quite right. I'm coming here, I'm sitting up in front of you as somebody involved in governance. So I'm not like Laree and so many of you here who are at the coalface on a daily basis. I'm here for governance oversight, and we try and get the settings right at a policy sort of level for our organisation. Now, it's an interesting one because the moment you think you get the policy settings right, you know, they start to shift and change. But many years ago, Southern Cross adopted a better for life vision and ethos for our organisation. And it is something that underpins everything that we do. That was certainly the vision when we adopted it at board level and widely supported by our senior leadership team and so forth. And basically, it's a vision of a deeply embedded, person-centred, healthy ageing approach that we deliver. And the idea is that it manifests itself in outcomes for the people who use our services. So it's all very well to have a vision, but the real issue then is that vision has to be delivered, and that's delivered by our staff. It's delivered by our management teams and all the people that who work with them and deal with our service recipients every day. So that process of how you go about embedding the culture is really the challenge. And you know, we've adopted approach. You know, if our teams don't understand our vision and don't embrace it and fully endorse it and want to live it, then you know, we're wasting our time having a vision if we can't have a crew who just embrace it and want to live it. And that's why we have our in recent times we've adopted a be the difference approach with our staff. And I wonder if perhaps it might, if we have a minute, if we could play that video that I have arranged.
Be the difference between turning up to work and lighting up a room.
Morning.
Be the difference between waking up and getting up. Between daily care and lasting dignity. Between a lonely day and a lovely day. And between a bellyache and a belly laugh. Be the difference between aged and agile. Between hearing and understanding. Be the difference between a staff member and a teammate. Between ho-hum and oh-yum. Between a long night and a good night. Be the difference between being a worker and being a carer. Be the difference. Apply now at Southern Cross Care.
Thank you. Now, that video was prepared and circulated for public consumption as part of a recruitment campaign, coming off what was a few really, really hard years for our sector. I don't need to go into it, but you know, and it's not specifically designed just for CHSP, it's for all of our services across the board, but it tries to imbue not only to our staff, but to potential staff members and to the community generally, that what we do matters, and that what we do and what you all do really does make a difference. So that's how we've tried to embed it. That's the starting point. You are valuable. What you do makes a difference. It's real. It really does matter. And that's how we've sort of tried to take that approach.
Thank you, David, and very strong opening. And no, he wasn't actively recruiting from this room. So don't sign up yet. All right, I'm going to go Laree next. Different sort of service, different location, quite different in settings, but you run the service. What's your perspective on this question, and how do you come to the issue, the challenge, the opportunity of culture?
And I was reflecting on the role of the board while you were talking, David, and we have to say that, you know, we have a very supportive board. They're very engaged and they certainly keep us accountable as a leadership team, as it should be. And so they're critical in our success around promoting a wonderful culture. I guess we're somewhat lucky, and also it's challenging to have our CHSP program. We take a whole lifespan approach to meeting the needs of our community, and so we have 14 other programs that we run in addition to our CHSP program for our community. And it's challenging in that when you're dealing with huge sector change like we are right now, it's difficult to keep all those plates spinning in a small to medium organisation where the leadership team bears the brunt of all of that work. And so I'd like to acknowledge that part of the reason why we have such great culture is because of our leadership team and how amazing and dedicated they are. And I guess the benefit of having those other programs across the community is that we have a really strong focus on quality. So our other programs are subject to the Human Services Quality Standards. And so we have a shared language around quality, our systems, from the ground up, around best practice, around being client-centred, around trauma-informed. That has come from our other programs and is now being embraced by the CHSP program. So that's really valuable. Myself as CEO, my perspective on culture is really about understanding that we can't compete on price, and that we compete with a lot of our colleagues and partners on the tablelands for wonderful staff. And so really, at the end of the day, we're trying to create a community that people want to be a part of. That's how we get great staff. And we focus on really valuing the individual so that our collective worth is really amazing. And so we have lots of wonderful initiatives that bring us together as our own community at Better Together. And I think that's our key to success. People approach us now and say, you know, can you keep us in the pool? We want to come work with you, because we've heard such amazing things about what it's like to work in Better Together.
Wow.
And I'm not wanting staff either.
Just saying. Wow, that's fantastic, and you've given us a lot to come back to. Thank you, Laree. Okay, Vikram, you introduce yourself as a member of the Council of Elders, and you have encountered lots of older people and have a very strong sense of the importance of the consumer voice. What is your contribution to this consideration of the culture of an organisation within which staff work and how that interacts with the experience of care?
Thank you, Janet, also for your opening remarks and what David showed the video. What I really want to say today is that whatever we saw in the morning also, we saw a video where we did not really take the point of the cultural diversity that Australia is facing today.
That's fair.
And that is one area I want to talk about just a little. It's not only the consumer cohort, the base, is also getting diverse. And the workforce definitely is very diverse today. You saw in David's video. I mean, almost every worker that you saw was probably from a migrant community. So you have this base of consumers whose expectations, their needs are quite different now than they were a few years ago. And then you have a workforce which is also very diverse. So there is a kind of a mismatch. And this is the mismatch we have to bring in our culture to give that kind of care that we all intend to give to our consumers. So I'm basically looking at a small example. I have a friend of mine who, we were great golfing friends for 10 years. We played together. Suddenly he had a fall and he had to get a restorative care in the house. And every time I interacted with him, what he said was, oh, every time somebody comes, somebody so different, somebody that I don't get along with or I can't relate to. And that is where I talk about culture. It takes very little for the managers or the care providers to just instill a little bit of a cultural intelligence, a bit of a cultural understanding that you are going to that person's house. That is the consumer that we're talking about. If only you could learn very small nuances of his culture. You don't have to be totally Italian to look after an Italian or be an Indian to look after an Indian. You go there, wish a person, be polite, be nice. There will be demands from the consumer. There'll be demands from the family on that worker. But if that worker is nice and polite and that is built into the culture of an organization or a provider, that when you go there, you are part of that family. Just become that part of that family, and that is where basically you will be able to break that barrier of diversity. So that is what I want to say.
Thanks, Vikram. There are undoubtedly going to be experiences in the audience too, which are relevant to the really important point you just made, and I'm keen to hear those as we go on. Shelley, last in line, with your wealth of experience in managing organisations and all the diversity of staff involved, including volunteers, can you give us some brief reflections on what culture means to you and some of the approaches you've taken, just as an opening comment?
Yeah, sure. I think we all see it as the DNA of our organisation. You can't always, as you said, you can't always describe it. You can't put your finger on it, but you can feel it. And I think we've all been in environments where you've gone into, whether it's a ward or environment or service, and you can sometimes just feel that there's a good vibe about the organisation. It's something vibrant, it's working well. There's a pumping kind of sensation. And then I'm sure we've been in organisations or in services where that's not been the case. And of course, for me, I think if the culture's not right in an organisation, you can feel that too, and it's debilitating. It really puts your strategies, the way that you are attracting, retaining staff, really off kilter. So it is incredibly important, and I think we need to think about the investment that needs to go into culture as well. It happens whether we invest in it or not. But if we invest in it and think about it and weave it into our strategies and our operating models and what we expect of ourselves and what we expect of our folk, then it becomes very real. But it does take investment, and I think it mostly takes investment in time. And I know that's one thing we're all mostly poor of. We sometimes think it's dollars, but it's actually mostly time investment. But I think the returns on that are so large when you get your culture right, when your staff are feeling that, being able to relay how great it is to work in the service that they are working within and delivering the care that they really want to deliver. It's such a fantastic thing, and the reverse of that is where the culture isn't right, and you will have to spend a lot of time, effort, money, personal toll on trying to get that culture where you want it to be. So my take is always invest on it, always think it's important, always put it right up there. And I often think around it's a funny thing to bring in Richard Branson in a national conference, but it was that quote that he made many years ago, and I am person-centred to the absolute core of my being, and it challenged me a bit. He said that he doesn't focus on the clients. For him are not the most important, it's his staff, because if he looks after his staff, they will look after his clients and they'll look after the business. And it really shifted my mindset around the balance between being person-centred, which we must be, but being centred on our staff, because we've got no service if we haven't got the staff.
Wow. Okay, that's a powerful suite of opening statements. I'm going to come back to Laree and bouncing off where Shelley finished, the nexus between strong culture and high quality care. Can you offer some observations? Have you seen it? And have you seen the opposite? Have you seen that where culture frays at the edges a bit and you can start seeing it in the way people are looking after older Australians?
One of my leadership team said to me that they believe that they're allowed to bring their whole selves to work, and then that allows them to be their whole selves with clients. And I think that is the core of what we try to do at Better Together.
Just bring the microphone.
And so I have been in organisations. I've been around a while, and I started my career in human services over 20 years ago as a disability advocate. And so I've been at the forefront of all the changes that happen in the disability sector, and I'm reminiscing on those things as I hear our conversations, because I can remember having very forthright conversations on behalf of clients with care providers 20 years ago that was talking about these same things. And so I understand also very personally what it's like when a family member who is on the passing away with Alzheimer's, and what good care looked like for my mum, and how that impacted my way of thinking about how we deliver our CHSP services, and also how we move into that home care space and how we transition our organisation. And my coordinator, Michelle, who's in the audience today, we have very long and sometimes rigorous discussions about how we can really hone in on absolute commitment to best practice, to our client centeredness, at the same time keeping that viability, which is we have to be here for our clients and for our community. So how can we balance those two? And it's a never-ending balance between the board and myself and my leadership team around unpacking best practice all the time in every context of our programs, and then seeing what we can adapt across the programs to make that work.
Okay. You've implied this in what you've said, but it's not always straightforward. It's not easy street. It's not a set and forget, and different compositions of staff over time will produce different results. Yes. So an effective manager is somebody who keeps their pulse on the organisation and understands what some of these dynamics within the organisation are. And Vikram, I'm going to come to you. You raised the really important point about diversity and cultural diversity in particular. What do you have to say to the providers in the room, many of whom manage services, where they have a culturally diverse staffing mix? You know, what are some of the thoughts that you might have as somebody who's observed these sorts of situations and heard about them from others over time? Are there any words of wisdom that you'd share in terms of coming to an understanding about the patterns of interaction and the sort of things that might be said to that staff about cultural sensitivity? And it might be language, it might be behaviours in the workplace, that next level of understanding that in another culture what you're about to do might be interpreted in a different way. How do we cultivate that sensitivity in our staff so that everyone is sufficiently empathetic to the needs of the others in that staffing group? Do you have any views about that?
Thank you. Very interesting topic. Basically, what you're looking for, you are looking for somehow overcome that mismatch. I'm an Indian worker. I go to a house where my customer or the participant or whatever you want to call him is an Italian. Can I just get a little bit of an idea of what kind of food, what kind of general demeanor, attitudes that person will have when I reach that house? It's not very difficult for the managers or the staff to learn those basic things. I'm not advocating that you learn Italian language or you learn Greek language or you learn whatever. It is just go there, and even if you wish that person in the language, just said hello, and then were polite, and you were nice, your whole demeanor was something that you are there for help. So that is what will make a difference. And it is that cultural sensitivity training, a bit of a knowledge of various cultures, and it's not very difficult to understand. We are talking about today people who have, come here as migrants. Now you have humanitarian visa people who've come here as a whole family, right from a newborn child to 80-year-old. Those people also need care now. So it's not only the old Australian who came after the Second World War, Italians, Greeks, or many other communities. So you have people from different parts of the world coming today and who need care. And then you have a workforce, again, of migrants. Look around. Something like 60%, maybe, figures may be wrong, 60 to 70% workers today are migrant workers, even humanitarian visa holders today, like Afghans or from Africa or from various other countries. So these are the people who are working now. They have to somehow be trained into Australian way of aged care and the respect to the consumer and the family. So that is what I want to say, that an organization, a care provider, can easily build into their culture a bit of a sensitivity to the...
Thank you, Vikram. David, I'm going to come to you. You're already putting your questions in, and thank you, because there's a question here from Jane, which I was about to ask David, so we're like mind. From the perspective of the board, David, do you actually have conversations specifically about culture? But more importantly, how do you as a board know if it's going well? What's your measuring stick? What are the signs that you use to be concerned or be very enthusiastic about what's happening?
I think, thanks, Janet. I think that the moment you think you've nailed culture, you're on a very slippery slope. So, you know, if you're just hitting a sweet spot, I can guarantee you it's temporary. And, you know, you've got to just keep working at it. And our board, and I keep, or I say again, that we're talking about this from a governance point of view, from at a particular level. And we assess our, you know, we get the feel, but most of all, we try and measure it. We try and measure it through a range of different reports that we receive as a board. Primarily, they are relating to staff engagement, and we do large-scale, we endeavour to do a significant large-scale staff engagement survey once a year, but also get other pulse engagements, feedback during the year. And we also, of course, get feedback. We do quite a bit of work with clients and client representatives, you know, and once again, I'm talking at the whole of services level, not just at CHSP, but we spend a lot of time doing surveys of our customers, our clients, our care recipients and their families about their responses to how we're doing. In fact, we've, in the last year and a half, been doing what we call deep dive surveys, where an external provider comes in and engages with our care recipients and or their families without our involvement. Some of these deep dives can take an hour, you know, on the phone. They're very significant, and we get reports on these as a board. That's done. We try and get that done once a year, and also a short pulse approach to that once a year. So we get reports on that. We obviously get, at our monthly board meetings, we get reports relating to feedback and complaints. And, you know, these are the sorts of assessments that we, you know, they're just ways in which you can get a feel for how well you're doing at what you say you're doing.
Okay. Now that's useful. Now I'm probably going to break the rules when I do this, but I'm in charge, so that's fine. I want to invite just a couple of you, and you can self-select, to come to one of the standing mics. I'm going to ask Shelley a question to give you time, but I want you to come and tell us how you know how your culture is going, whether it's a healthy, vibrant, supportive culture, or whether there are problems that you need to get in and sort. Because many of you aren't of the size of David's organisation. You are smaller, you might be more bespoke, you might be in a single community, in a single postcode, in a single community, possibly, I don't know. But so you wouldn't have access to the sort of corporate resources that David and his team do, but there must be a way that you can take the pulse of your organisation. So I want to hear your voice too. So any of you game enough to share that with the larger room, if you'd stand up against one of the standing mics, and I'll give you time by going to Shelley with the next question. Good on you. I'll come to you in a minute. Well done. Shelley, you have managed volunteers as part of your workforce, and I know that the room is also interested in the meshing of paid staff and volunteers and how it doesn't always go perfectly. Sometimes it can be absolutely smooth and there's no real visible or other distinction, but other times there are subtle differentiations and that doesn't always play well. Do you have any observations to make about managing a hybrid workforce?
Yes, I think the need to understand what the culture is of your volunteer workforce is really important as well, because we all know that it's the purpose of the organisation and the reputation of an organisation that attracts somebody to come and be with you, and certainly absolutely for volunteers. That's absolutely the thing. But with the workplace culture, they'll determine how much effort they put in or whether they stay, and how long they stay, and what they say about you out into the community as well, because often your volunteer staff live and work in the same environment. I think it's really important to get to know what's important to your volunteers, what it is. Don't just think you know what it is that's engaging them in the work that they're doing, but really get to understand what that is. And again, it's about that investment in time, making sure that the conversations and the same strategies that you might do with paid staff are the same conversations that you'll be having with volunteer staff around, making sure they understand and are feeling engaged with where the organisation's going, things that's happening for the organisation, that they're not feeling separate to that, and that you are not undervaluing what they bring. Because they're there not because they're getting paid, they're there for a very different driving force. I think the importance of understanding the importance of the volunteers to themselves as well, that sense of team, and that sense of team in an organisation is something to pay real attention to, and ensure that your paid workforce as well really do value the work that the volunteer workforce is bringing. So it's lots of things are very, very similar, but I think you have to really pay attention and think about the value that because they're saving us enormous amounts of money. The services that we just could not run without them, they make a huge difference too. And a lot of my experience is running hospitals, as I mentioned earlier, about, just as we were talking about this morning, around that, the quality of that conversation. And it's quite often the volunteer staff member who will go and have that conversation with somebody and make a huge difference to their day. So making sure we value them for what they bring.
Oh, great answer. Just a show of hands, how many of you have volunteers in your workforce? Yeah. Okay, the vast majority of you. It is a feature of CHSP services. It doesn't mean it's unique to you, but there you do have, when you look at the workforce stats, you have a higher proportion of volunteers than home care package providers or residential services. And again, I think it speaks to your value proposition, that you are investing in local community, and people have that strong sense, or stronger sense of affiliation, that they are my services because they are part of my community. Not all sweetness and light, because as Shelley implied, they will talk about you outside the organisation, and that's not always entirely comfortable. But that's another reason to value the work that they do and make them feel important too. We have a game participant from the floor. What's your name? Where do you come from? And what can you say?
My name is Maria Johns. I'm the CEO of Multicultural Aged Care. And thank you for giving me this opportunity. Actually, I just want to say that when you talk about diversity, cultural diversity, this has always been it has always been part of the service, delivering culturally appropriate care. MAC as an organization, we are very culturally, linguistically, and religiously diverse, but how do we maintain that harmony? So we do sector support, whereby we work with the people in the sector on providing training in delivering cultural competencies. We work from the point of entry, care finders to my aged care, right down to end of life, palliative care. We work with the experts organization, dementia, palliative, and whatever subject matter that is. So we work with them. We provide the cultural experts, whereby we assist organization to look at these systems and process, because it has to come from the top. It can't be just a value-add autogonistic action. It is, and also it is not about, if you have one Italian worker and you've got a Chinese resident, you say, okay, you are a cultural diverse, go and talk to that man. I've been asked to do that myself when I was in the education department, That does not work, But we also know that there are Anglo-Australian clients living in Burnside who would not have workers from Elizabeth. When we talk about diversity, there is diversity within the mainstream services as well, So, and I'm sorry to say this, one of my colleagues in the past said that HK workers are becoming the factory workers. They are invisible, they get the blame for everything, and yet they expect to do more than what they were used to. They expect to do mental health, behavior management. That is not part of their original training. But then management has to bring in all this. But for us, in terms of cultural diversity, there is a program that's been funded since day one, where they work with providers. It's no cost to the organizations. And what we're saying is, it is about, if you embed it into your systems and process right from the beginning, it will flow down into practice. It is you don't have to be a cultural expert. I'm a cultural expert. Italia's a cultural expert. We are cultural intelligence practitioner for years. What we do is we show them, we provide them with tools. As Vikram said, if you're working with one client who's having a palliative care, find out what end of life means to them. Those are the key things relevant to the work that you do, are the things that you need to know. And there are resources in all states and territory who will provide that. And I'm also proud to say, David, I'm so proud of your video, because we've had your CEO on our board for a number of years. It was a win-win for us, but it was just like, I can tell you, Southern Cross have got a very good systems in place. And that's what happens when you work together. I know that we have knowledge of the organization who have invested in cultural diversity into their systems and process. They have very happy workers. They actually said, we are happy.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
So it is. And also, I have to say this, Janet, this is just a comment, right? I'm a little bit disappointed to see that the display you have in that reception area, you have all the other groups, but you did not have, particularly in terms of the cultural diversity component part of it, you did not have anything there for cold,
Point taken.
So there is the PCAC Alliance who's been providing advice at the national level. We are the go-to organizations in the department website as well.
We relate to you. We certainly have a relationship with PICA. So I am sorry that that's an oversight.
We do. We are making inroads there. But what I'm saying is, there is one area that we are the go-to in the department website as the organization, because diversity framework is a must. It is embedded in the standards, it's embedded in service delivery. And when your assessors go out, they will assess right from the point of entry, care plan, or right to the end of life, what are the culturally appropriate service that's in place.
Thank you. Thank you.
So that's from me.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Good contribution. Well done. I'm going to turn the conversation slightly and go back to Laree. What happens, because you are so much a part of local communities in the way you deliver services, your role description, basically, your reason for existing, that can be a strength and also a challenge, because you are drawing your workforce, as Shelley said, I think, from the local community. You're drawing your volunteers from the local community. They may be delivering care to people who are known to them. And I wonder whether that has a cultural implication that resonates with the people in this session as CHSP providers, and whether you have any insights into managing that.
So yes, you're right. It can be a double-edged sword. I guess from our perspective, and it's been a constant theme over the last couple of days, has been about trust and about taking the trust that people put in us as an organisation very seriously, and about how we balance individual client needs with the staff that we have. We also provide psychological services as part of our CHSP offerings, and in a small rural community, it can be really challenging for people to engage in mental health services and psychological services. And so it's very, it's forefront in our mind about how we manage those potential conflicts of interest and about privacy and confidentiality and all those things. It's a constant feature of our discussions at the quality committee level, but also at the leadership team as well.
Okay, thank you. David, we've got a question here from Anne in relation to the consumer advisory bodies, which is a new obligation applying to approved providers. And I'm assuming there's a general level of familiarity with this requirement that at least once every 12 months, approved providers are required to offer to their consumers the opportunity of establishing a consumer advisory body. Now, a number of you may be doing this already, and you may well have, and I expect you do, many of you at least have access to the consumer voice in an organised way. So you're not just talking to individual clients and finding out how it's going for them, but that you have some means of corralling more than one of those voices and hearing that. But I think, David, your experience would be interesting here because with your size, I'm quite sure this is something you've taken very seriously.
Absolutely. We've taken it very seriously, but it hasn't been that easy.
No, that's not right.
Quite frankly, we've had our both residential and community advisory groups now operating. It took us quite a bit of work to get the groups up and running in terms of making sure that we had the right a framework for them to operate in, and then to put out for expressions of interest to various people to participate. That was had a lot of people interested, but again, trying to get the right balance. But it's not really for us to be selecting in some respects, because then we could be seen to be perhaps influencing. So it's actually been quite difficult. But suffice to say, we have had our advisory groups up now for a few months. We've had at least a couple of meetings of each. And in that time already, we've had changes of personnel membership, either through ill health or other courses, and just the role, the people who are providing the advice and participating, they're getting used to the role themselves. Yeah. And one of the other things that we've found is how much information, what are the issues? They want to know what are the issues we want to hear about, and so we provide information, and that overwhelms sometimes. So we've quickly learnt that perhaps we've got to provide a little less information and reading material, and really try and extract more from them what their issues are.
Yeah. Let me ask a supplementary question which draws it back centrally to the question we're addressing today of culture, organisational culture. It may be early days, but either on what you're planning or what you're doing, how does that influence the way staff go about their work? How do you as a board translate that into the expectations that you communicate to staff which have a cultural underlay?
Are you talking about the advisory groups?
Well, yes, and generally listening to the consumer voice as it influences the way you deliver care.
Yeah. Look, I suppose we as a governing body have also been struggling with that whole concept of how you extract the information from our consumer. Where do you get the consumer voice from? We were struggling with that prior to COVID, and then COVID hit, and then it's been quite a challenge for us, and we're still learning about this because, as I say, our advisory groups have only been operating for a few months, and we adopt our responsibility to respond to the issues that they've raised, and we respond formally to them, and then try and pass and as a board endeavour to direct our management staff to take on board what's been raised. But it's still a learning process for us all, I think.
Yeah. Shelley, back to you. Gosh, I have several questions I want to ask. One is essentially about training. What, in the circumstance where there's a dissonance between what you're hearing from the people using the services and those care workers who are delivering the services, and they have a different perspective or a different sense of priorities, and this can happen because humans are humans and we all have differences of opinion, and maybe there are people who are more set in their ways, and this is the way we do it here, and I know that's what they want, but this is the way we're going to deliver it, and there's a gap between the two. Now, that is a strong culture in the organisation talking right there, isn't there? But if they're not meeting an expressed need or preference that's articulated by those using the services, then you've not got that quite sorted. And the question in part is, what's the role of training here and how does that work?
I think it's obviously got a strong role in training, and I think tailoring that training to make sure that message lands well as well. If you can, and I've been in services where actually utilise that feedback from the patients or the recipients of care to actually come and talk with the staff about their experience of that.
Yep.
And that is such a powerful mechanism.
Just briefly, pause, hold that thought mid-sentence. Have any of you done that? Have any of you brought the consumers into a setting where they can have a conversation with staff? As Shelley says, it's immensely powerful. It needs to be well governed, but if you've done it, I suspect you've found how valuable it is. So just hold that thought. Shelley, keep going.
And I think because it really does change your practice. I think obviously what we're talking about with culture and trying to develop a positive culture, it normally takes humans to change something in the way that they work, in the way that they interact. And none of us are that great with change. We say we are, but we like the end outcome, but the actual change process is often quite difficult. But something hearing from somebody who's experienced the care, whether it's if you can get the person themselves, that's incredibly powerful. Family's really good too.
Yeah.
Hear from the family or carers is fantastic. But the person themselves, if you can make the environment safe enough that they feel comfortable to actually say what their experience was, is incredibly powerful. And I think that really does land the message and bring about those changes in behaviours. I've seen it happen, and I think even Craig this morning was saying when he had that experience, and I'm a nurse as my clinical background, and listening to that, where that moving from task focus to really that relational care, and seeing your own practice coming back at you is such a powerful piece. So I think the training, tailor your training to the outcome that you're trying to deliver. And certainly when we're looking at person-centred care, if you can absolutely involve the person in that, you're going to get payback in spades from that.
And to sensitise staff and to allow them to take up that culture of respect and generosity and kindness, and looking at the individual as they find them and meet them.
And I think I did a big model of service delivery for one of my organisations, and was trying to move us away from the word patient, because often I would see that we say patient, and it's almost like they're a lesser mortal. But you're talking about a person, if I go into hospital, I'm Shelley. I still want to be Shelley. I don't want to be the patient. I don't want to be talked about as a patient. I want to be me. And I think the importance of remembering that it's the person is so critically vital.
Mm. Does anyone want to share a story? I saw a few heads nod when I said, have you tried that? Because it can go pear-shaped. If you have a slightly fragile culture, then the encounter of staff with clients, if they have very different views about the way of the world, can actually result in an escalation of tension. So it needs to be carefully managed. But in normal circumstances, with a deft manager in charge of the process, it's a very rich and rewarding conversation. Does any of you want to talk about that? And if you do, line yourself up behind a mic and we'll hear your experience, because I actually do think there's real merit in that idea as you seek to cultivate a set of behaviours in your staff which are going to deliver the best result, which is, after all, what you're all seeking. Vikram, I'm going to bring you back into the conversation. From the perspective of cultural and linguistic diversity, there are inevitably different ways of seeing the world. And I think a lot of them are embedded in our early life, our upbringing, the cultural underpinnings of who we are. And they are most pronounced for people coming from an entirely different culture and different country. So you've already shared with us your views on the ways in which workers need to at least have an understanding and try to respond to what they see in the client. But what about, is there anything different or additional you want to say in terms of worker to worker relationships, where you're interacting with your peers in the workplace, or when you come together for a staff meeting? If you're delivering care in the community, you may not spend a lot of time with your fellow workers, but you might from time to time. And is there anything that you would want to say about that relationship, where they're from different cultural backgrounds? And is it just about active listening?
That's a very interesting.
Turn it around the other way.
Oh, sorry. That's a very interesting part of workplace culture. Now, as I see today, the workforce, which is like basically from Asian background, the Indian subcontinent background, Philippines, Africans, Middle Eastern, they all have different cultures. Some cultures, basically it's ingrained in their culture to be looking after their elders. And that is the culture which is gradually, it's been there, but it's gradually, because of the pressures of coming to a new country, and both husband and wife have to work, and it's getting more and more difficult to be able to look after their parents or elderly people in the house. So that culture is now kind of changing. But between the different cultures in a workplace, it's not very difficult to gradually, it can't happen overnight, is gradually try and understand other cultures. Sensitivity of other cultures. I mean, if somebody doesn't eat, say, a pork or a beef or something, you don't have to talk about it. It's just understand that this particular person eating habits are different, or eating, it's based on religion or whatever. So a little bit of our understanding between the workers, that other worker has this kind of sensitivity of their culture. Respect that. And gradually you'll find the team becomes a very homogeneous, it works well within an organization. And I have been a human resource manager in one of the residential care facilities. And I was basically asked to do that work because something like 50 to 60% of the workforce, especially the carers, were of Indian origin. And the owner of that residential care facility probably thought, here's an army man, get him, he will wield a stick and sort out things. But basically, they were getting into their groups till finally we had to say, listen, you can't be sitting in one corner eating your curries and, and doing things. You got to mix with other workers also, wherever they come from. And gradually the whole thing worked. So it's not very difficult for an organization to mix their people, start understanding a bit of their culture. And I think you can come out with a good results.
No, really, really nice perspective. Next question is a really good one from Shannon. Does anyone have top tips to help support our staff with refilling their cup of organisational culture when they are often out on the road, moving between clients' homes and who have more limited time, channels, touch points with their colleagues? Really pertinent question. I'm guessing it would apply to a lot of you. Laree, start with you.
So I guess there are some ways that we create community at Better Together. So we have a wonderful culture where we have a meditation morning at the start of each week, and people are encouraged to participate. Our case managers, that's a bit too laid back for them, so they do kickboxing one afternoon a week.
Oh, okay.
And some of us participate in the Better Together choir. So we have a few things that create community at Better Together. But I think it runs a lot deeper than that. I think we also promote a culture of, if someone's not happy, they have a voice, and they have lots of different ways to express where they're struggling, how they're struggling, support to identify how we can support our staff better. And there's lots of different channels for that communication to happen, especially around our leadership team and how we have a genuine, open conversation with our team members and our staff. And I know that it's something that all CEOs say, but I really value my open door. Every time we have a new person start at Better Together, and this is the luxury of having a small organisation, I realise that I get to meet with them, and I'm setting expectations straight away about how we do things around here, how we support each other, the way we treat each other, and also let them know what our vision is for Better Together and how we serve our community. And really from day one, try to bring them online and buy into that vision of what we provide for our community. It's so important. And of course, we have structures around that. We have EAP, we have a strong quality framework, we have that takes all of our staff from different levels into the quality committee. So we have structure around how our staff have a voice, but it's really around making it okay for team members to go, I'm not having a great day and I need help. This is why I'm not having a good day. It could be something that I can fix, that comes from a system, that comes from an approach that's not working for them. And it could be just that we've poured so much energy into our clients for the day that actually we've got nothing left for ourselves. And in a small community where mission and values are core and the most driving force in our organisation, there is a risk to our staff that because they care deeply about their community and that they're providing service to family, friends, friends of friends, parents of people they went to school with, it's the web of connection is very real, and the pull to pour yourself into your clients is very strong. And sometimes our role as a leadership team is to pull people back and give them permission to look after themselves and to focus in on what supports them and give them, like I said, lots of channels to say, hey, I need help with this, and then having people respond accordingly. So, yeah.
Wow, that's a very insightful answer. Thank you for that. I'm sure there are a lot of people who are taking mental notes at least, or reflecting on your own experience as you listen to Laree. I'm going to take the discussion into an adjacent direction, which is about the learning organisation, which is a concept which I'm sure is familiar to all of you, which takes us down the quality and safety track. And there are very strong cultural aspects to this as well. If you are concerned about the practices that an individual is undertaking in the field, say, or their behaviour, their interactions with clients, something they're doing or not doing, which doesn't quite sit right and suggests to you that there may be a quality or safety issue, then the concept of the learning organisation is that you don't blame them, you enable them to come forward and say, gee, that was close, that was a near miss, or I got that wrong, and there was a consequence for somebody, it didn't go well, in order that you can have then the conversation which must follow, which is, well, what did we get wrong and what do we need to do to prevent it from happening again? Now, this is tough because instinctively we're going, you fool, why did you do that? You know, anyone could see that was going to end badly. Come on. But for the sake of culture, a slightly different approach might deliver a better, a more sustainable result. And I'm going to ask David firstly and then Shelley, your reflections on what I've just said. From a board's perspective, this you set the tone for the organisation, and I'm interested in hearing what you have to say about this notion of learning organisation, not blame-free culture. That's sometimes just not possible, but certainly not charging people with getting something wrong, but inviting them to articulate what happened in order that the organisation can be better for that experience. What's your view?
Look, we would love to be able to say that we're a learning organisation, and but I think we do try to be, but we don't necessarily always get that right because, you know, sometimes things are reported to the board. We have incidents and so forth where things go wrong, and you know it's reported that you know the relevant person has been disciplined in some way, shape, or form. So that you know the whole concept of discipline is still you know alive and well.
And let me come in here because I want to make sure that I also respect the obligation of the board to hold your staff to account. Yep. So I'm not suggesting for one moment that discipline is off the table, but you use it as one of the tools available to you.
Yes, indeed. But, you know, it is something that happens pretty close to the coalface, this type of scenario. And, you know, in terms of being a board, we wouldn't, or we don't come in contact with how that's operating. Now, can I perhaps just spin it a little bit and say, we would say that we have a clear vision of what we're trying to achieve. And what we also think is important, and I take on board, you know, the diversity of our workforce is extraordinary. But what we do have is very clear roles and expectations of roles. So clarity of role, clarity of expectation is important. And then consistency of induction, consistency of training. And it doesn't matter what about that, well, despite a lot of diversity, nonetheless, there is consistency. How it's you know, things are imparted to people of different cultural backgrounds may differ. You know, we can have things that are a lot more visual rather than language-based or word-based and so forth. And I know that's done. You know, I'm not right at the coalface, so the details I don't know, but certainly we do that. So we try and be consistent about what we're trying to achieve, and what our expectations are, what your role is, and how so, and how we expect you to do it. And generally, that works pretty well for us.
Yeah, okay. Shelley, slight variation on a theme. Performance management is a vital tool in the management toolkit and is judiciously employed to ensure that staff are held to account for the quality of their work, and that you, as an organisation, are delivering on the promise and commitment you make to the people who use services. And every single one of you would have some form of performance management framework. But it can be divisive. It can be understood in a particular way by staff who might be subjected to it. And it can subtly undermine a culture which is slightly unstable. And I wonder whether you have views about that, but also from your own experience, if there are any in the audience who are experiencing some of this and wondering, what some of the approaches you've used which have been successful have been.
I think the first point I would make is that, and it's a well-known saying again, but the behaviours that you walk by is the behaviours that you tolerate and accept. And I think with performance management of a staff member, to me, I always see it as a respectful thing to do, because it's the way that you do it. It's the people make mistakes. We're all human, and sometimes good people do things that they wish they had not done. And it's all about how they take accountability for what they've done. You own your words, you own your actions, and what they'll learn from that. But it's also, going back to your first point, Janet, around how the organisation supports and elicits that information from the individual and supports them through, even if it's a process that they've got to go down. It might be because sometimes there's disciplinary actions that occur, but it needs to be proportional always, taking into account what's occurred and what can be learned from it for the individual and for the organisation. So I think it's in how it's done, but also the importance of if it's not done and somebody is making mistakes and we're not addressing that, it's the effect on the rest of the team can be quite extreme. I'm sure most people have experienced that. So it's how it's done, not whether it's done, I think is the important element.
Laree, looks like you had something to add.
Yes, I just wanted to build on what Shelley was saying. I think performance management starts way before performance management. I think one of the things that's really important to lay the framework for that sort of process is around the importance of supervision and also self-reflection. We talk about best practice, we talk about self-reflection, we talk about the importance of supervision right from our maintenance guys in CHSP right through to our psychs. And it's so important that there's opportunities for all team members to engage in that process. We even do it in a group setting as well. We do group supervisions, external group supervisions. It's a real, I think, what makes us provider of choice in our programs, because everybody is valuable in that process. Everyone feels safe to say, I didn't get that right. How can we do it better? And so hopefully that culture prior to where you have a performance management issue supports the improvement of the performance way before it gets out of hand. Having said that, I make no apologies for striving for excellence at Better Together, and if someone is fundamentally not on board with that, then I don't make an apology around us parting ways. I think it sends a horrible message to everyone who comes to work every day and strives to provide an excellent service, that people who aren't on the same page are allowed to come to work every day and undermine that. So I don't apologise for that as a CEO at all.
Very strong CEO comment, and one I can certainly understand and endorse. We've got a really interesting question from Anne. Please comment on your approach to staff support and supervision for workers working solo in people's homes and the connection to organisational culture. Now, this is a variation on the earlier theme where we're exploring how you refill the organisation culture cup for those who are working in the field. But solo in people's homes, Laree, again, I think I'll ask you to start and reflect on this incredible challenge. It's culture adjacent, because there are certain things you need to trust your employees to do the right way every time. And part of it's training, but part of it's culture. What's your observation here?
I think I think it's very challenging. It's very challenging for myself and the leadership team around, especially when we have a new staff member come on board. That sense of we're sending that person out in the community and we're trusting them with this relationship that we've built with the community, where clients feel safe in our hands. And so we take that really seriously. I think across, we've got quite a large region, and in that region there's very discrete small communities that have their own nuances for service delivery. And I think it's an ongoing challenge to, when people go into people's homes, that they feel that they're bringing the whole of Better together with them in the room. And there are ways that we can do that. And again, I think group supervisions and self-reflective culture makes that more accountable. But certainly we don't allow people to go into our clients' homes on their own the first time round. We absolutely don't. No.
That's interesting. You may have said earlier, I don't know, how many staff do you have, just so people can get a sense of the size of your organisation?
We have about 48.
48.
That's paid staff. And then we have about 25 very engaged volunteers.
You see, the way you describe your service, it sounds larger, it sounds more substantial, it sounds more sophisticated in terms of scale. But when I asked you that question, I wonder how many of you were surprised. Wow, 48 staff. Some of you would have organisations significantly bigger than that. And I think what Laree has shared today is revealing, very revealing, of what's possible in a small-scale organisation, so deeply embedded in the community, feeling so much a part of the community and contributing and investing in the community and the people who live there. I think that's a really interesting insight. Into the closing stages of the meeting, and maybe a couple more questions and then we'll close. I'm interested in exploring a bit further the ways in which you, services generally, get feedback about how you're going, how an individual instance of care was for the recipient of care, and whether that is a systematised process where you routinely seek feedback or whether it's a bit ad hoc, and what contribution that can make to culture. Because all of us, and this is uniform, all of us tend to talk about the complaints. Oh, we received another complaint because X didn't show up, or X was late, or X didn't have the right vehicle, so access was more difficult, whatever it was. So, and we need to be alive to those complaints because they are a way of improving the service we deliver. But what about the compliments? And it seems to me CHSP services is ripe for compliments because people never take you for granted, or rarely. It doesn't happen as often. They understand you are part of the community. They understand you're investing in the community, and they're very grateful for what you do in the main. And I would have thought that there are compliments that you receive, and I wonder how or whether you make those available to staff. Because I see it in my own organisation. Shelley and I see it all the time. It's very easy to criticise the regulator, can I say? Really easy. we can displease so many people at the same time. It's remarkable. But when we get a compliment, oh my God, our heart sings. And it might be one of Shelley's services, it could be another part of the organisation. And we share it, and you can see people sit up a little straight in their chair and go, we did that. So, Laree, again, and I'm asking you because you deliver the services at the right level, is this something you take seriously?
Very much so.
Janet, there's a lady come up to them.
Oh, wonderful. No, stay there and we'll come to you shortly. Thank you. Laree.
Our CHSP clients are never backwards in coming forwards, I have to tell you, but we certainly hear from them every day, and my office is right across from CIT, so our client intake team, who answer the phones all day, and I can tell you we get feedback every day. And of course, if it's negative feedback, it comes straight to me via the coordinator of the program. But we also get the most wonderful feedback. And recently I received a beautiful handwritten letter from one of our CHSP providers, clients, and it was her expressing what the program meant to her. And it was really beautiful. So of course we shared it with the rest of the staff, put it on SharePoint, shared it with the board and all of those things, because you're right, Janet, we turn ourselves inside out when we get something wrong. It's part of our culture where we take it very seriously, but we often forget the fabulous services and what they mean to clients and all those positive stories. So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, please, from the floor.
Thanks, Janet. I work for MND Victoria. We have a similar sized organisation, actually, about 50, just over 50 staff. And I just wanted to share that we share with our staff compliments every month at our all staff meeting. So all of our staff come to that meeting. And we have between usually 20 to 25 compliments a month.
Wow.
We also share the complaints, of which we don't have that many, but we do have them from time to time. And yeah, it's awesome. We just often would read out exactly what has been sent in to us. Sometimes we might, paraphrase it a bit, but it's a very, very powerful way of sharing the excellent work that our team do, and we're so proud of it.
Well, good on you. We talk often about, and certainly over the last day and a half, we talk about the importance of seeing the individual, recognising them in the way they exist in the world. Staff have the same need, the same emotional desire to be recognised. And it's not that they miss it if it's not there or they go looking for it, but when it comes, it's gold, isn't it? Yes, there's somebody at that mic.
Just very quickly on that, I wanted to share a couple of things. My name is Mona and I work for COTA SA with SSD, but also Silver Rainbow Training. And about being seen and being heard and being validated and having good relations with staff. We're just at the tail end of developing a digital storytelling program for CHSP. So that'll roll out in about a month. And if you happen to be looking for Silver Rainbow Training, we have a fantastic end of the year 50% off. So if you want diversity, you want inclusion, and you want quality training. Sorry about the plug. I couldn't help myself. Thank you.
Boy, I've snookered there. All right. One more. This is the last question, please.
Thank you. One of the, Brian Lippman from Winteringham, I think one of the interesting things, particularly for Laree, is it's all very easy. It's quite easy to have a great culture when you're a little organisation. All of us have been at some stages, or most of us, in very small organisations when you get a culture. But it's a lot more challenging when the organisation grows. So, I was very proud of the culture that we had when we were 30, but I'm still proud of it now that it's 1,100. But it's different problems. And
that's very true. The order of magnitude. I think, Brian, if I can venture, the principles remain stable, but their application is more challenging because of the larger body of staff. And I'm seeing David particularly agree. You would agree with that, wouldn't you?
Nodding vigorously.
Yeah. Thank you for that. All right. We have, in fact, run out of time. And thank you so much for your participation. Really appreciated getting all the questions. We've done many of them, possibly not all of them. To the extent that we didn't get to all of them, we will take on board this information and allow it to inform the information that we make available following the conference. I hope you've gained something from it. And I just want to finish by thanking the panel members, Shelley, Laree, Vikram and David. I think they've done a champion job, and we've heard an enormous amount from them, which I think has been really insightful. Can you join me in thanking them?